Alrighty, so I've created a test troop. On the first turn, it's going to use Super Peck Attack 1, turn 2, Super Peck Attack 2, and turn 3, Super Peck Attack 3. Now, onto the fun part, that is coding these attacks. One more thing before we start, make sure you have the SumRunDev SuperTools engine plugin enabled. I'll leave a link in the description to everything that you'll need. Alright, now let's get on. The first attack I want to replicate is this really simple one based off of the King attack in Deltarune. It's basically a whole bunch of spades randomly attacking from the side. Here's the code for this first attack. You can see there's a whole bunch of stuff. But, we don't have to worry about all of this at once, so let's just remove this and we'll get to it later. So you can see there's a tag here, use Undertale attack. And there's a reason why this tag is important. I'll get to that later. You can then see this tag here, UTB duration 600. And then this code here, if f modulo 30 equals 0, then this dot create attack. You get the point. So what exactly is 600? What does it refer to? Does it refer to milliseconds? Because 600 milliseconds for an attack is pretty short. Or does it refer to seconds? Because, 10 minutes for a single attack, that's pretty long. It actually refers to frames, 600 frames. And in RPGMaker MV, one frame is 1/60th of a second, like 60 frames per second. So this would be 10 seconds. Then we see this code here. What exactly does this mean? So F refers to the current frame that is in place. So for example, 1 second in, F will be 60. In this context, 30 means every 30 frames. So if we were to change this to 60, this code would run every 60 frames every second. We'll put it back to 30. So this code runs every half second. We can then see here, this dot create attack. This code here, this function, essentially tells us create an attack and math.randomInt 2 plus 1. This gives us a random number between 1 and 2. So it could be create attack 1 or create attack 2. And what exactly is attack 1 and 2? That's what we're going to get to now. And it's this code here. You can see UTB attack 1 and UTB attack 2. They're both very similar, so let's just have a look at attack 1. And essentially each attack is a bunch of parameters, almost like a JSON or Python dictionary style of presenting data. So we can see here initial x. So initial x refers to the x coordinate where the projectile starts. So in this case, it's this dot window dot left. So essentially it starts at the left of the window where my mouse pointer is. The initial y, this is a little more complicated. It's this dot window dot bottom, so at the bottom of the screen. Plus means is the initial y can be anywhere on the screen. So it can be on the top of the screen, on the bottom of the screen, in the middle, but it's always going to be on the left. The spawn rate is 300. So the spawn rate is essentially like how quickly each attack generates. So if we increase the spawn rate, there's going to be more attacks. If we decrease the spawn rate, there's going to be less attacks. And now we have the x speed, x acceleration, y speed, and y acceleration. So we can see that the x speed here is 5, so it's going to travel rightwards across the x-axis rightwards at a speed of 5. And we can also see that there's no acceleration, so that speed is going to stay the same. It's going to stay constant. And you can also see here that we've defined the y speed and y acceleration as 0 because we don't want any vertical movement. It's just a horizontal attack. I want to make sure that you all know that if you don't want any vertical movement, make sure you explicitly define the y speed and y acceleration as 0, because if you do not, then it'll do its own thing. It'll do its own thing. There will be vertical movement that you probably won't want if you don't define the y speed and the y acceleration. And then there's the rotation, and that's essentially like the orientation of the projectile, because and we can see here this is math.pi.2. So a little bit of maths. I promise it's not too bad. This graph here, this shows what value. So the image here is spade. This is what it looks like if you're interested. I'll explain where to store the images later. The collision type is pixel. If you don't know too much about collision types, just keep it as pixel. And then there's also the height and width. Okay, so now there's the UTB attack 2. And this is essentially similar to this attack where it's starting from the left and then going rightwards. This starts from the right, and again the y-axis, it can be anywhere up and down, same spawn rate. But we can see this time the x speed and the rotation are both negative, so it's -5 and negative math dot is -half of pi. And this essentially tells us to go leftwards from the right and rotate it and the sprite is rotated the opposite direction. And again, we can see collision type pixel, and then same height and width. And then there is this tag here called delete outside of frame. And what this means is when the projectile, when the sprite actually leaves the attack box, it gets deleted. And I would recommend that you keep this on because it can help prevent stuff like lag from happening. But if you want to make like a really interesting attack where sometimes it goes outside of the attack box and it returns back in, then I'd recommend you move this so you don't have it on. And now we can go back to here, this dot create attack and either 1 or 2. Essentially, if we get 1, then it will call this attack, the UTB attack 1, the attack that starts from the left and goes to the right. And if we get 2, then it calls this attack here, UTB attack 2, starts from the right and goes to the left. Well, before we start, in your game folder, go to the image folder and make sure there is a folder named some random dude, spelt like this. And then make sure there's a folder called UTB. And this is where you can add your projectile sprites. So for example, the spade is right here. Alright, that's all. Back to our test troop. This is the first attack we're going to create. So projectile super peck attack. We'll go to our skills. We'll go to projectile super peck attack number 1. And you can see here there is an area called note. In general, the notes don't really do that much in RPGMaker. It's more for like your personal note keeping. What we need to do essentially is paste our code into the notes. And what the plugin will do is look through it and see if it has the use Undertale attack tag. And if it does, then it will process this entire thing as an attack. So what we'll do is click apply. We'll go back to our troop. We'll do battle test and let's give it a run. Awesome. Looks almost like the real thing. Not really, but you know what I mean. Ouch. So, for our second attack, we're going to take some inspiration from the Papyrus battle. And it'll also give us an opportunity to have a look at some more features that this plugin has to offer. So in the Papyrus battle, he turns your heart blue, which makes it so that you can jump up and down, and essentially you're bound by gravity. And we're also going to have a look at the blue and orange attacks. Code looks very sparse. We have the use Undertale attack, tells the plugin, hey, this is an Undertale attack, time to use it. The duration of 400 frames, so that's about 12-13 seconds. But this we have not seen before. UTB mode 1. And what this tag does is it tells the plugin, this attack is going to be a gravity attack. More specifically, it is bound by downwards gravity. You can actually change the gravity so it's up, down, left, and right. So that's pretty cool. Alrighty. Let's not worry about all of this for now. Let's have a look a little bit at the UTB code. This looks a lot more complicated than our first attack. And it very much is. So you can see, for example, every 30 seconds the code will run. The condition will be met. Not every 30 seconds, every 30 frames. But there's another condition here. That F is the time, is more than 300 frames, that is about 5 seconds, and every 5 frames passes. And if those conditions are met, it will create the attack 1, so the projectile that's represented by attack 1 will be called. But there's another condition here. Every 60 frames, every 1 second, there's actually a for loop. And what a for loop does is that it allows you to run a code block multiple times. In this case, you can see I is less than 4, which means that this code block will run 4 times. And it will actually create the attack projectile of 2, attack 2, and it will essentially create attack 2 4 times. Now, why would you want to do this? Maybe you want to make like a spray attack, just throw a whole bunch of projectiles at once. And that can be pretty fun. That can be pretty interesting. Alrighty, now let's have a look at the attack. There's a lot of code here, so let's just... we'll start here. So we have the UTB attack 1 tag, the opening tag. We have the initial X, which is at the left of the window. Initial Y, this complicated stuff, which essentially means anywhere on the Y-axis, anywhere between the top or the bottom of the screen. Spawn rate of -1. This is actually used to ensure that the set number of projectiles that you want to produce is stable. So if you want more stability, you can set the spawn rate to -1. The X speed and the Y speed, they have some randomness to it, and that will essentially add some unpredictability. We're always on our knees, essentially. And you might find this interesting that the y speed is actually a negative value. And the reason why is because the y-axis on a computer display actually starts on the top of the screen, not on the bottom, on the top. And the further we go in the y-axis, the more downwards we travel on the screen. So if we have a negative y speed, it actually means that the projectile will travel upwards. But we can see that we have a positive acceleration on the y-axis. And this ensures that there's going to be some downwards acceleration. And that's actually how gravity works. It's when something falls down, the acceleration is negative. On Earth, the default is around like 9.8 seconds or something. And for our sprite, we're going to be using the battle axe blue. The collision type is pixel, and the type of attack is stop. So you might be wondering, what does this do? And this essentially tells the plugin that for this projectile, the player must stop in order to not get damaged by it. And that's why we also have a blue sprite, because in Undertale, a projectile where you have to stop is usually represented with blue. And there's also the closing attack for UTB attack 1. So this essentially tells the plugin that this is the entire attack 1. Now this is interesting. This is called direct code. And this allows you to essentially inject your own custom JavaScript into the attack projectile. And this code is actually really interesting. What it does is that the object will rotate in the direction that it's traveling. Okay, let's have a look at UTB attack 2. This time it starts on the right, and again, anywhere on the y-axis, anywhere between the top or the bottom. Spawn rate -1. X speed, this time it's going leftwards because it starts from the right. The y speed, again, also starting upwards. We also added a little bit of X acceleration on the left side. And for the attacks that come from the right, we're going to be using the battle axe orange sprite. And this type is move. So move, the plugin tells the game engine that if the player is moving while the projectile hits it, that it should take no damage. So that's essentially how the orange attack works in Undertale. And again, we have the same direct code. And again, we have the closing bracket for UTB attack 2. Alright, we'll quickly paste this in and give it a try. And finally, let's have a look at our third attack. This is a fun one, you're going to like this. So we can see here the duration is 480 frames, so about 8 seconds. And this UTB code will only be activated once. And what exactly is this attack? So we can see here the initial X is on the top left of the window, plus a little bit more, spawn rate -1. But we can also see that the X speed and the Y speed are set to 1. So that means that the object is going to be traveling downwards and rightwards. And we can also see that the acceleration is 0.1 on both axes, so the speed is also going to increase over time. For our sprite, we're going to be using a spinning star, so it's going to be like a star attack. The interesting stuff is in this direct code. If the projectile reaches the edge of the attacking box, that it bounces, it's going to have that effect. And we can also do this dot rotation plus equals 0.01. So this essentially rotates the object over time. And this will have some really interesting effects with how it moves.